welcome to this week's Waste-Free Wednesdays, which this week is about textiles, in particular reuse, repurpose, recycling. Every year, over 350,000 tonnes of clothing ends up in the waste stream in the UK. And I love this little thing. This came from the guy from the Sewing Bee, whose name slips me at the moment, one of the judges, about we have enough clothing on the planet right now to clothe the next 6 generations of the human race, which is, I think, incredibly scary, which is why I loved the Sewing Bee, because each week they obviously had an upcycling thing to try and get people to think about upcycling clothes, and obviously then had a whole program dedicated to it. Anyway, I digress. So every year, why? Well, people no longer wear it. It could be out of fashion. It could be too big or too small. It's the colour's faded. The white is no longer white, or it's ripped and stained. So, the information I'm giving you, a lot of it is on the Love Your Clothes website, but the sort of 4 sections that I'm going to cover, which is buying new clothes. If you have to buy new clothes, why not try these ideas? Care and repair, because actually if you look after your clothes properly and wash them at the correct temperature and dry them and iron them or whatever you do with them, if you're not doing that right, that actually, decreases the lifespan of the clothing. My favourite bit, refashion and upcycling. I love doing things like that. And my other favourite thing, unwanted clothes, because obviously that's a great way to give things to a charity or use a textile bank. And like I said, so it would appear that the average person has over £1,000 worth of clothes tucked away unworn. I've probably got more than that. But what would help is if you actually plan your wardrobe. If you don't have a huge amount of money, or you don't have the space, or you just don't want that many clothes because you're trying to cut down on things like that, just have a core items, things that match, mix and match. I mean, I've got stuff that mix and match, so I can get up in the morning and just grab a pair of trousers and a shirt or whatever and go to work. When I used to go to work in the office, and before I stopped living in jeans and jodhpurs. So look what the gaps are in your wardrobe. See what you've got. See if you've got colour schemes or styles or something like that. And then bear with me. And then obviously from there, you can get things that match, so that you don't have to spend so long buying more clothes or getting dressed in the mornings. They say to buy quality. Not all of us can afford to go and have our clothes handmade, or not all of us can afford to go buy handmade shirts and suits and things. But is a £1 t-shirt good for value for money? I would say sometimes yes, sometimes no. The Primark ones definitely are quite good. I like their t-shirts and their vest tops. But if you want good quality clothing, buy the best you can afford, because it will last years and years and years and years. My dad's got a dinner suit that's 50 plus years old, maybe 60 years old. Not that he wears a dinner suit very often, but because it was good quality, it's lasted and even survived me wearing the jacket for ages in the 80s. You could also look at pre-loved and vintage stuff. Vintage clothes in particular are very, very trendy at the moment. People are sort of looking, particularly the younger ones, Caitlin's age and possibly even younger, that they're looking to be different. They don't want to wear, be a sheep and follow what everybody else is wearing. So vintage clothing there's a huge demand for it. And it's usually better quality, and it's usually got fabrics that you don't use these days. And I think in this day and age, the stigma of secondhand isn't there. I mean, we don't say secondhand, we say pre-loved, we say vintage. But I was looking for some stuff for an 80s party. I had great fun searching online for, trousers and frilly shirts and stuff like that. But you could raid your dad or your granny's wardrobe, I bet, yeah, but that's how so many of these sort of fashion icons from the 80s and 90s started. They decided, oh, I'm going to nick my dad's trousers and nick my dad's brogues and things like that. But you could have a swishing party or swap clothes with friends. That's one way of having a new outfit. Or hiring a dress for a special occasion. There's some more information that Rob's put together about hiring a bit further on. Because, as it says there, 59% of all discarded clothing goes into landfill. Obviously, we don't landfill, but we're still putting huge amounts of clothing into our energy from waste. So when it comes to actually looking after your clothes, wash them properly. Know the right temperature to wash things at. Check labels. There is a big list of the care labels on Love Your Clothes, which actually, I mean, how many people do actually look at their labels? I think I look at mine and go, can it be washed? Can it be tumble dried? And that's about as far as I go. And I know that if I look at it and it's dry clean only, not that happens very often. It doesn't get bought because I just don't do dry cleaning. I haven't got the time. But also, once you've washed them, make sure that if there are any stains on them, that you've removed them. I mean, you can buy all these stain removers and things like that, but Love Your Clothes has got all sorts of advice, actually, to be honest with you, on removing stains. Baby stains, as in food from one end and food from the other end. And then they've got it from curry stains, grass stains, all sorts of things. And there's some really good videos on Love Your Clothes to help you go through, to do all this stuff. And to be honest with you, Love Your Clothes is a very good go-to place for all sorts of things when it comes to textiles, because there's more information on there than I could give if I spoke for 3 hours. So definitely put that down as one to look at. But what else, can we do? We can upcycle our stuff, because it says there, the carbon emissions from new clothing bought in the UK is greater than the emissions of flying around the world 900 times. So, if you don't have to buy it, try being crafty. There's a couple of kids' old socks that have been lost because the washing machine is just like a black hole for socks. And instead of throwing it away, you can make sock puppets for kids. The kids can make the sock puppets. There's so much stuff you can do with old socks. I tried putting cat litter into one and putting it on my dashboard, because minis are notorious for steaming up, and it didn't work. But hey, I used an old sock. But again, Love Your Clothes has got so much stuff. There's so much stuff online on Pinterest or YouTube about turning handbags from shirts, or a tablet cover from a jumper, or the big thing is memory cushions or memory stuff. I mean, people who've lost fathers, brothers, whoever, mothers, they can have a piece of their clothing made into a memory cushion. There's someone who does it with horse rugs, so when your horse dies, you can send the rug up and they'll actually make you a nice cushion with it. And of course, accessorize. You can change the look of a whole outfit just by putting on a scarf or necklace or bracelets or whatever. And that also helps with sort of the retro stuff, because a lot of accessories are retro. But, you can also alter clothes if clothes are too big or too small. And if you can't do it yourself, there are people who can do it for you. Again, Rob's found some good, useful websites of people. But there's always somebody down the road that can do clothing alterations. You can find them through Facebook or cards in shop windows and things like that. Or you could learn a new skill and actually do it yourself. The sewing classes, local colleges do sewing classes. I'm doing my City and Guilds in theatre costume with Inkbarrow Design Studio, which is based at the Brenda Killigrew Sewing Studio in Bromsgrove. That's a really good place because they do short courses teaching you how to use a sewing machine. So if you just Google Bromsgrove Sewing Studio, that will give you all the information that you need about doing stuff there. And of course, there's repairing. It says there 75% of people can sew a button on, but they can't replace. 17% can replace a zip. Only 17% can replace a zip. It's hard to replace a zip. I understand that, But, this is why people throw clothes away, because they don't have the skills anymore to actually repair them. So all the time, or and people are just like, oh, can't be bothered. So it goes in the bin. But if you actually do a little bit of research, I mean, Rob's found the companies, Timpsons and Johnsons, the cleaners, do minor repairs. If you're doing dry cleaning, you can send them off to online repairers. Even retailers can potentially do repairs for you, because there is always somebody out there who can repair it for you. So we're on to like the unwanted textiles, the unloved. 57% of people say they recycle their textiles, but 41% say they're not aware of recycling facilities. The days of the textile bank are numbered. We'll talk about that later. But you could sell your stuff. I mean, there's so many forums now. You've got eBay, you've got Vinted, you've got obviously Facebook. You can sell it or give it away on the free sites. There's a lot of people making a lot of money selling clothes at the moment. So definitely worth looking online. Or you could swish. You could have a swishing event, go to a swishing event, which is a great way of sort of swapping clothes around. We used to have them at County Hall regularly, apparently, and they were really popular. So I'm hoping that once all of this is over, we could look at possibly doing it again. But even some of the retailers will, swap clothing for vouchers. H&M and Marks and Spencer's. Primark do a recycling scheme, but with no voucher, because obviously their margins are so tight that they can't afford to give away vouchers. But at least they're addressing the issue of the fact that they are one of the reasons that fast fashion is causing all these problems. And recycle it, genuinely just, recycle, take it to a charity shop, although I understand a lot of charity shops are being a bit funny about what they're taking at the moment. Or you could, put it into a textile bank. You could put it into a bag that comes through your door. But the only things I would say about those is be very, very careful. There's a lot of textile banks out there that purport to collect from charity, and they don't. They are usually bright green, and they claim to collect for all sorts of charities. Children of the Gambia is the big one that they collect for, but I think they may have changed their tack recently, and they just have a thing that says, clothes recycling, or charity clothes recycling. But basically, they're commercial merchants, so no money goes to charity, and they're popping up everywhere. So what I say to people is, if you want to use a textile bank, use a proper authorised and recognised charity, such as British Heart Foundation, Oxfam, Salvation Army, the Scope as well, and Marie Curie. And I think that for shoes, you've got the Variety Club ones there. They are definitely the people to take your clothing to if you want to put it into a bank. You can rent. The idea of renting clothing, I had a look at that actually, and it's amazing what you can rent. You can rent, ball gowns and things like that. So if you're going to a posh do, you can rent a item of clothing that would cost thousands, and you could feel like the movie star that you want to be. And that's it for the presentation. Talking about recycle banks. There's more banks popping up in Bromsgrove, and Bromsgrove got rid of all their on-street banks. So I don't know why, because the bottom has dropped out of the textile market. The Textile Recycling Association said that because of COVID, there's been so much stuff that's being stockpiled. Some of the end markets like Kenya are putting blocks on textile imports, and China is flooding the African market, which was the main market for clothing, with cheap new clothes. So people are going to want new rather than second hand. So it's an interesting time with the textile industry. We're just waiting to see what happens about overseas markets, and then hopefully the price might go up a bit. Any questions?
Emma, if it's the prime aim is to reduce the waste going into the black bins, does it actually matter if it's private industry who take, or private people who take the textiles away?
No, but I mean, we just say to people, if there is no choice, use them. But it's better to use a charity one, because, you know, it's like the tap man. You know, there's no, you know, trace of where it goes. There's been links allegedly to Eastern European crime, not in this part of the world, but in London. I know the Met did a big raid on a textile recyclers, and there was it was slaves, you know, what's the word? They're people that have been illegally brought here, you know, to work. And that's obviously, yes, it's great that it's going out of the waste stream, but if people knew what was going on behind the scenes, they'd prefer to put it in an authorised charity. That's what I will say to people. But because the bottom is slowly coming out of the market, we're hoping that because what they've done is they've probably just abandoned their banks and they'll leave them now. Because I noticed that, they're just, nobody's emptying them. They're full of fly tipping. So that's left the local councils to deal with it, unfortunately. There we go. Cheer you up.
Yeah, I thought those hiring, the renting schemes were quite a good idea. There's two different models. There's the ones who run it like a clothes shop, and so they have a centralised base of clothes which they rent back and forth. The other one is the peer-to-peer version, which is like her, or however you pronounce it, HURR, where you actually take a picture of yourself wearing the item and saying, you can rent this from me. So you make a tiny bit of money, and then the person pays, and so it's rewarding everybody within the scheme, which I think is nice. Which is why her won a sustainability award, I think, either this year or last year.
I think it's a good idea.
Clever idea, isn't it? And when you think what's, I mean, I'm not picking on young women in particular, but there is that sort of pressure, isn't there, to have a new dress at parties, and if you live in somewhere like London, and you think what you pay for some of those dresses, I mean, you're talking hundreds and hundreds, and in some cases they are only wearing them once or twice. I think it's quite a fun thing to do, to have that sort of like, you're finding a new outfit that you could actually just wear once with a clear conscience.
Yeah, because I've got dresses upstairs that I bought for, a wedding, and for, I bought a little black dress, and I didn't wear it for 2 years, and I wore it to our works Christmas do at Christmas, surprisingly. And that's the only time I've worn that dress. And again, like the one for my friend's wedding, I've worn it once. Because they're not the sort of dresses that I could wear to the office, particularly the black one.
Shall we do some? Shall we do some bring along tips if anybody's got any in particular?
I've got my hand up, by the way. So.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, you have, yeah.
Couple of points really. One thing, yes, I have noticed in the decrease of plastic bags being put through the door. Whether it's the Corona stuff or not, I don't know, but it makes sense to what you just said, Emma. The other thing is the cost implication of repairs. I mean, some of the repairs can cost you a lot of money. And you think to yourself, well, is it really worth me doing this? Especially with zips, just a simple thing, like if a zip's gone. I mean, somebody wanted over 18 to 20 pounds, and that's supposed to be a cheapish sort of place. You think to yourself, well, if that's only going to cost me 30 or 40 pounds to buy new, and 20 pounds to repair a zip, well, I might as well buy a new dress, sort of.
No, I think it's a good point. I think producer responsibility and the ethical side of business is going to make a big difference on that. So, I mean, you mentioned Patagonia. I mean, obviously, Patagonia is about as ethical as you can talk about in terms of companies. But I think even some of lesser known brands are starting to look into it. There was Dr. Martens did it briefly. I think they've stopped. Actually, I was just on their website trying to find it. I know they were doing like a free repair scheme. It seems to have vanished now. But I do think it's going to happen. We're going to start to see that sort of thing as producers become more responsible for their products. I mean, even Apple, we're talking about I know we're talking about clothes today, but if a phone company is talking about our products should be more repairable and replaceable, I think we're definitely moving into a better kind of world, aren't we?
Well, under the government strategy, producer responsibility is going to cover clothing. So, manufacturers are going to have to make their clothes either recyclable, repairable, or anything like that. Yeah, because it is true. I mean, I've got a denim skirt that probably cost me £10 from Matalan, and the zip's gone. But I love that skirt, so I'm going to attempt to repair the zip. But yeah, it is silly when people are paying, But if it's a really nice piece of clothing, or it's a good high quality piece of clothing, you don't mind paying for the repair, do you?
Isn't this where the repair cafes possibly? I mean,
they do clothing repairs at the repair cafes.
I have been to the repair cafe a few times now. Unfortunately, it's all closed down, but I believe they've got some sort of scheme, which I didn't really take much notice of it. But if you contact somebody, have you heard of that? Have you contacted somebody? If somebody comes and picks it up from your house, or you deliver it somewhere?
Yeah. John Rhyme, I think it's something that John Rhyme has been doing, the guy from Malvern.
Yeah, no, this is the one in Worcester, the Worcester Repair Cafe.
Is it Rod?
Yeah, Rod Howell.
That's it, that's the guy, Rod Howell. If you get in touch with him, you can ask him, but I know that the Malvern Repair Cafe have been running a bespoke service for
because
people.
I've had a lot of things done there, simple things sometimes, with me losing a lot of weight recently, I've had things sort of taken in and things like that.
Well, there you go. There's your zip replaced.
Jacket sort of thing,
Yeah.
Anybody else like to jump in for an upcycle or repair?
I kind of clocked this, memory cushions. Just wanted to remind people that's how patchwork started. That people would make patchwork quilts using up fabric from much loved items and garments. And patchwork is still really popular. It doesn't have to be done with new fabric. You either need to do it kind of all with new fabric or all with reused fabric, because otherwise the tensions are a bit squiffy. The other thing I'd say is if you're patching a garment, because very often you can just patch if something's got torn, and use fabric of the same weight. Otherwise, it doesn't hang properly. And darning is surprisingly easy. I'm amazed people gave up darning. It's
I suppose it's quicker and easier to buy a new pair of socks.
Well, I suppose it is, but darning's dead easy. I was trying to think of anything else. There's something you can do turning t-shirts into ribbon yarn. If you cut a t-shirt in a circular fashion, you can make a yarn with it, which you can then knit with. I've never tried it, but I think you can find that on YouTube somewhere. And the other thing I've come across is turning a t-shirt into a shopping bag, and there's all sorts of stuff online that tells you how to do that. Yeah,
there's loads. I mean, I'll try and put together, I didn't have time today, but I'll try and put together a list of links and things that Rob can share at the end of it. Because there's so much, you look on, so much on Pinterest, and it's unbelievable.
I was amazed actually the percentage of people who say they know how to sew on a button, because I'm always flabbergasted at the people who don't know how to sew on a button, and also who don't know how to take up a hem. That's also dead easy.
We don't expect people to start making their own clothes, but clothes are thrown away for that reason. The buttons come off, the hems can't come down. It's like, well, surely, someone can turn it up, your mum, your nan, someone at work. It's just ridiculous, but
I still think, it's all very well talking about upcycling, all of that kind of stuff, but the heart of the problem with this, for me, is the way the clothing industry operates. And I'd love us to be able to put some pressure on there and get them to behave in a more environmentally favourable.
I think there is pressure on them because there's something called the Sustainable Clothing Action Pact. I think, which is made up of wrap and textile recyclers and people like that and manufacturers. And I think they're trying to, and I think it's the European thing.
Well, Denmark's certainly making progress on how to dye fabric without using so much water or so much energy. So there is something going on. But
it's like anything and everything to do with waste. It's just a very long, very slow progress. You know, and basically we've lost a whole year, haven't we, now with coronavirus, because nothing's going to happen till next year now, I don't think, unfortunately. Yeah.
I must read out some suggestions from Rosemary, who can't be here today, but she did send me a little list of things that she wanted to point out. She recommended a couple of books. Mending Matters by Katrina Rodabao, and Darning, Repair, Make, Mend by Hikaru Noguchi, and Joyful Mending by Noriko Masumi. And
you do it happily.
Yeah. But Japanese also use a technique called sashiko to mend denim, and how she'd used it to mend a denim skirt and to mend knees on jeans as well, which is quite good, because denim's a very sort of hard-wearing sort of fabric, so if you can keep it going by patching up and mending, it certainly makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favourite socks tips that I saw on Love Your Clothes, and I've done recently, which I thought was a great one, and it had a great little tip on just cutting them up into tiny little circles to use as like those little furniture buffers on the floor, because we've got like laminate and wood flooring downstairs. It was a great little tip, that was, yeah.
Using any kind of I think of cotton jersey kind of fabrics, but that kind of weighted fabric, make your own dusters and cleaning cloths.
My mum used to do that. She'd chop up her old T-shirts and my dad's old vests, and I think she drew the line at his Y fronts, thank God. But yeah, my mum always did that, made dusters and things out of old T-shirts.
We do that all the time here.
It's a great way of, you know.
Just one question. I've got some dust sheets from a few years ago, and some repair people, decorators and stuff, left it behind. But just it's about, I don't know, 14 foot by 8 foot or something like big, but it's a cotton one, and it's covered with paint and everything else. Quite a thick one. I just don't know what to do. I'm thinking about it. I can't take it to a charity shop. I feel guilty about putting it in a clothes bank.
Well, you couldn't really put it in a clothes bank because it's covered in paint.
It's dried up paint, but yeah.
Even so, it's still paint. Yeah. Well, you can either see if somebody wants it like on Freegal or Freecycle, you know, because if someone's doing some decorating and they need them, you know, if not, he'll have to go down Bilford Road and stick it in the landfill. Well, no, not that it's landfill, but they still call it the landfill container. Yeah, I'm afraid. Or put it in your bin, your black bin.
We've been using large old sheets which are not fit for purpose for beds anymore, just hanging them out of windows. It sounds really a bit Keith Robinson, but it's amazing how much shade you can create.
All right.
The sort of shade for, it allows you to leave the windows open and let the air in, but also stop quite so much sunlight coming in, as opposed to blinds, which kind of block the whole window up. Also, shading the wall on the outside prevents it acting like a storage heater overnight.
That's a good idea. I've just been drawing my curtains where I can, because that's what they say to do, don't they, when it's really hot?
I'm talking about shading. People have abandoned a lot of umbrellas. But the material that you can take off an umbrella is quite... it's waterproof. You can use it in the garden for creating bits of shade, like, you know, in this weather, where these sort of bushes are getting burnt out in our garden, saplings and things. You can actually break it over and peg it on.
That's a good idea.
Leave it there. All sorts of things you can do with them. Really useful.